This is GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers, that is 2-3 page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 417, part 2, entitled Masculist Crushing of the Unconscious Arrogance of Feminists. Carrying straight on. Bullet. Women should have equal status in society as men. Women should be given the status they deserve, which should not be equal to men, since men greatly outperform women. Masculists strongly disapprove of giving women extra privileges, expecting women to pull their weight. Masculists feel that women make a greatly inferior contribution to society, so should be given a status that reflects that inferior contribution. It is only feminist dogma that causes women to think that they are as status-worthy as men. Women have always been treated as the inferior sex in all cultures across the planet, across the millennia. Men only tolerate women due to women's two traditional monopolies of vagina and womb. Men are forced to be nice to women because women have the power to deny men access to their vaginas if men are not nice to them. When men look at women's overall performance record, it is not surprising that men don't take women seriously, seeing women largely as fuckholes, baby factories and child raisers, since that is what women evolved to do. It's only very recently that men gave women the contraceptive pill that has changed women's traditional role of being mothers to a large brood of kids, to female careerism. Modern feminism was only possible due to men's invention of the pill, of household gadgets, of science-based medicine, giving women a life expectancy of 80+ years. Women invent almost nothing, create almost nothing, build almost nothing. Where are the female genii? There are very few, and such female rarity can be calculated, as mentioned above. Bullet. Women deserve to be arrogant towards men, given the above. No. Female, or rather feminist arrogance of women towards men only makes masculist scientists all the more condescending towards women, since this feminine arrogance of women towards men is delusional in the eyes of the masculists, so motivates masculists to force women to see the reality by preaching masculist science to women, to society, by shooting down feminist fairy tales. Bullet. Women are morally superior to men. Masculists see how women oppress men far worse than vice versa, with women's financial parasitism of men, women's man-slavery, women's fluffy feminist hypocrisy in the divorce courts, women's many decades-lasting gender crimes against men, for example paternity, fraud, women's pill lying, women's hypocritical opposition to the legislation of the that's paternity rejection right, given that women have the maternity rejection right, etc. Masculists thus feel that women are morally inferior to men, given that women are such parasites of men who do not pull their own weight, expecting men to treat women as special snowflakes in order to persuade women to let men put their penises inside them. It is this sense of moral inferiority of women that motivates masculists so powerfully to put enormous moral pressure on women to fip up, to become financially responsible fips as adults, and not to remain fluffies, whom masculists despise and aim to wipe out, since men have the financial power to do that, since a fluffy can only be a fluffy if she can get her financial claws into some gullible manslave. But thanks to the masculists and the MGTOWs, the supply of such gullible manslavable men is drying up, as the masculist message spreads across the planet, causing men to wake up to the idea that they don't have to pay the traditional price of being a manslave to a parasitic fluffy for decades of his life. He can get the sex he wants from a woman without being a manslave to her by insisting that she be a fip, and if she's not, then she gets rejected by society, by men, spat at for being immoral, parasitic, manslaving vermin, to be wiped out by being totally ignored by men, left to rot on a shelf, manless, loveless, sexless, babyless, and spat at. It will be very, very difficult for fluffies in the near future as masculinist ideas spread across the world, influencing billions of men, forcing women to be FIPs or die. Bullet. The patriarchy ought to be destroyed to liberate women. The patriarchy, defined to be general male dominance, is never going to disappear for genetic reasons. Men are smarter than women by 4 IQ points. Men have a 10% higher IQ variance than women, 10 times the testosterone levels than women, and most importantly, 10% larger brains than women. So it's men who build everything, invent everything, create everything. Men see women as useless, only good for fucking, growing babies and raising kids. Since women, with the pill, are now able to take up the traditional male role of working outside the home, women are being forced to come to terms with the fact that they are living a lifestyle that they were not evolved for to live, and they are failing. Women are not men and are incapable of performing at male levels at the top end of the performance scale. Therefore, men will always outperform women, hence will inevitably rise to the top, thus creating what the feminists call the glass ceiling. That glass ceiling, that is, men occupying the top, most prestigious positions, is a natural consequence of men's inherent genetic superiority over women, as shown clearly by science. The fact that so many feminists reject this reality, hence reject science, only makes masculist scientists all the more contemptuous of these inscient, innumerate fairy, PC, feminist peasants, and sneer at them for living in their fairyland like children, not to be taken seriously. Bullet. Women should continue to be treated by men as privileged princesses. Sure, women like to be treated this way forever. Who wouldn't? But women will only be treated as privileged princesses if there are men who are prepared to do so. But as masculinist ideas spread across the planet, there are less and less men who are prepared to see women as princesses to be given special privileges. Men only treat women this way because they want to put their penises in women's vaginas. But with 40% of women now obese and another 30% fat, that makes 2/3 of women so fat that they have made themselves unfuckable. So women's primary source of attraction for men, that is women's vaginas, is being lost by women. Soon, men will have their sex bots and their art wombs, so will soon be able to grow their own kids and prefer to sex their bots rather than disgusting, obese females who only cause the yuck reaction in any man seeing such a female land whale naked. Masculists put enormous moral pressure on women to fib up, to behave as morally responsible adults who bother to make the effort to become a FIP by getting a career-competent education so that she can make good money over the half-century career window that she has. Masculists are pushing society to socialise girls in the same way as boys, pushing young women to toughen up the same way as boys are expected to by society. Masculists tell women to toughen up, to FIP up, to grow up, and stop behaving like princess snowflakes, since feminist snowflakes are not respected by masculists, who merely piss on them for being incapable, not pulling their weight, being the immoral, parasitic, manslaving vermin that they are, to be punished, to be utterly rejected. Bullet. Men exist on this earth to pay for women to have babies. This attitude is felt by most women at a very deep level. It's the attitude that dominates the minds of the hated fluffy feminists who control the divorce courts, who see men as cash machines to be abused and robbed, stripped of their kids with a 90% probability. It is this fluffy feminist attitude that is so hated by the masculists, and getting rid of it is one of their major aims. Women who continue to hold this attitude will be severely punished by masculists, forced to rot on the shelf, since no masculists, which will be most men in a few years, as masculinist ideas spread across the planet, the way second-wave feminist ideas did in the late 1960s, will accept that the financial massacring of divorcing fathers in the hated fluffy feminist-controlled divorce courts should continue. If it's not stopped, there will be a sex war, where masculine soldiers will go out into the streets and shoot fluffy feminists in order to stop whole populations from being wiped out, which is what the politically myopic, fluffy feminist hypocrites are doing in the divorce courts, making divorce and hence marriage and paternity so toxic for men, such a shitty deal for men, that now in many countries 2/3 of young men reject marriage and refuse to have kids, since they utterly reject facing a 1 in 4 chance of being financially destroyed in the hated fluffy feminist dominated divorce court system. So they live the MGTOW, that's men going their own way, lifestyle, rejecting marriage, rejecting paternity, and spending their money on themselves. Masculists see fluffy feminists as indirect genociders, so have to be stopped, with bullets if necessary. Fluffy feminists are truly hated by the masculists, who aim to wipe them out, so that whole populations are not wiped out, which is what the fluffy feminists are currently doing. Bullet. Fat women are beautiful. This belief is one of the most delusional held by millions of obese feminists, who for ego reasons try to persuade themselves that they are sexually desirable to men, and push this delusional idea onto society, trying to persuade men that obese women are penisable. The reality is just the opposite. Masculists have a string of very negative labels for fat and worse obese women. For example, FUF, that's F-U-F, fat, unfuckable female. Or yucker, which is a woman so fat that any man seeing her naked would evoke the yuck reaction in him. Or cock shrinker, which is the typical reaction of a man seeing an obese woman naked, with such rolls of fat projecting over her front that the man couldn't even see her cunt. In short, fat and obese women are sexually repulsive to men, which is probably one of the major reasons why so many men are now wiping their hands of women. Women need to remember that their chief source of attraction coming from men is their vaginas. Men evolve to want to penis women. It's a very powerful force in men. So when women destroy their strongest source of attraction coming from men by making themselves fat or worse, obese, then they lose that strong source of attraction coming from men, and hence suffer the neglect of men. Few men want to put their penises in fuffs, yuckers, or cockshrinkers. If women want men to desire them sexually, then they will have to make the effort to put in the work to count calories so they don't eat too much and gain weight. Millions of women don't bother to do this and are then surprised that men find them sexually repulsive. These fat and obese women only have themselves to blame. If they don't make the effort to be sexually attractive to men, then they shouldn't be surprised that men reject them. These women get from men what they deserve, that is, nothing. They are ignored. ... Once the above arguments of the masculists are well known amongst society, particularly amongst women, then the current unconsciously arrogant attitudes of feminists will be crushed by the power of the above arguments. Soon, most men will be familiar with the above masculinist arguments and will use them to crush unconscious feminist arrogance, lashing out at such women, telling them that they live in an iscyanate, innumerate, PC fairyland, which reflects very negatively on them. If women want to be respected by men, by masculists, by society in general, then they will have to become FIPs, pulling their own financial weight, behaving as responsible adults and not as monoconscious, arrogant feminazis whom masculists despise, and increasingly by female masculists as well, who agree with the demands of the masculists, seeing these demands as mature, as reasonable, and to be adopted by fit females who have self-respect, who don't behave as privileged, fluffy princesses. Princesses live in fairy stories. Women live in the real world. If women want to behave as princesses in the real world, then the real world, in the form of masculist pincers will bite them. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Author of the book Masculism, Men's Rebellion Against Being Manslaves to Women, an e-textbook of 410 plus masculist flyers for men's studies courses. Freely downloadable in Microsoft Word format from my website. Ciao.